Hey everyone, Mark Montgomery here with Great College Advice, and in this video we're going to talk about planning for an absolutely awesome summer. Let's get going. So as we think about how to plan for your summer activities, you need to take these basic principles into account. First of all, you need to think about your interests. I mean, what is it you really are interested in and that floats your boat? What do you like to do? Think about that and think expansively about it. Don't think first about, well, what do colleges want me to do? No, think first about what you want to do and what you like to do. What's important and interesting to you. Second, you do need to think about what do you need to do. There may be things that are essential in your family for even making college possible. For example, do you need to make money? If you do, then you need to look that straight in the face and be straight up about it. And you may also need to think about your family responsibilities. Do you need to babysit? Do you need to do stuff around the house? I mean, I remember when I was in high school, I had to paint my parents' house. That was one summer, paint the exterior. That was something I had to do. So do you have any of those responsibilities? Maybe your family's also maybe traveling. Maybe you've got a summer vacation planned that your family's going to go on. That is a responsibility, but it's also fun. It should be fun. Think about what you need to do. Also, don't think about what everyone else is doing. Don't ask your friends, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And follow them. Don't think about that way. Again, think of the first thing. What are your interests? You also do not need to spend a lot of money in order to do something useful and worthwhile for your summer vacation. You don't need to spend a lot of money, and you don't necessarily need to go very far away from home. A lot of students may think that's essential, but it's really not. Again, like everything else, when we're talking about activities outside of the school context, we're asking ourselves, what level of accomplishment have you been able to achieve? What is the measurable outcome of your participation in this activity? And that is true for summer as well. You want to think about, what does this mean to me? Why am I interested in it? And then how can I demonstrate that I'm really good at it? That's what's important. Finally, do think about the fact that colleges do want scholars. This is underappreciated, but you are auditioning here in the college application to go to a school, not to a resort, not to, to be on The Voice or something like that, or to have your works hung in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. No, you're trying to get into a school to study stuff. So they do like demonstrations that you are a good student. Now, there are lots of different types of summer activities, and I've made a list here. Academic programs, sports, performing and fine arts, community service, adventure and travel, work, internships, and research. There are probably more than this, but these are the general categories that most students tend to focus on and fall into. So I'm going to go through each one of these individually and talk about what makes a good summer activity in this realm and what makes not so good summer activity in this realm, and how you can take the best advantage of the opportunity before you. So first, let's look at academic programs. The most valuable academic programs are those that you really have to compete to get into. There are some really high-powered academic programs out there that require you to apply. You need recommendations. You need to have a certain level of academic competence to be able to get into those programs. Those are definitely some of the most valuable programs. It's sort of like going through the Harry Potter sorting hat kind of routine, where you're getting sorted earlier in the system, and if you are able to get into these highly competitive programs while you were in high school, well then why not get into a highly competitive college later on? So if you can get into those are awesome. The least valuable academic programs are the ones where you just have to pay to play, where there is a program out there in some sort of academic realm and you just pay a lot of money and you can go do it. Those tend to be less valuable for a lot of reasons. And similarly, the programs that are hosted by top universities but maybe not presented by them. So you have things like ID tech camps and all kinds of programs in the performing arts that may be hosted at Stanford or Brown or Dartmouth or whatever, but they're not actually presented. That you're paying your check, your credit card, to a completely different organization, not to the university itself. These are not really hosted by the university, they are hosted at the university. And most campuses will rent out their facilities in the summer because they're not being used by the university itself. They'll rent out their classrooms, rent out their dorms to other organizations that are presenting these summer activities or these summer programs. So generally speaking, those are not as good as the ones that are more competitive in nature and that are actually presented by the university in question. Some of the best values, though, are the local exploration programs, I call them. For example, if you're thinking you want to be an engineer, or you might be interested in government or public policy, there are often programs at your local universities that are not that expensive where you can engage in these exploration for, say, 1 or 2, maybe 3 weeks, that provide you with guidance and experience to help you to understand whether or not this kind of career, this kind of major would be appropriate, exciting, interesting for you. Architecture programs, that's a great way to help you stand out in architecture majors because those are very competitive. So there may be programs in your local area that are not that expensive, where you don't have to travel all the way across the country, where you can engage in these exploration programs to decide, yeah, I really do love engineering. I'm really good at it. And now I understand what engineering is. I understand the difference between mechanical and chemical and electrical. And I know for sure I love civil engineering. That's what I want. So look for those kinds of programs if you're not sure what you want to major in, or you want some deeper understanding of that discipline before you make the all-important decision to major in it when you get to university. Stay away from the ones that are just pay to play, that are very expensive, and the ones that seem like they're going to provide lots of prestige, but generally are not. When it comes to sports, the most valuable summer activities are those elite showcases and camps that provide a high-level exposure for athletic recruiting. Because especially at the end of junior year, but sometimes in some sports at the end of sophomore years, those coaches are combing these showcases or elite tournaments that they're going to pull their top players from. So if that's you, if you are a top player in whatever sport, and you can participate in some way in these showcases or tournaments or other kinds of activities that give you that exposure, that's definitely something you should consider. The least valuable sporting activities are very expensive programs that are designed for the less skilled, that may not require any sort of a tryout, where you can just go. You pay your money and you can be one of the hundreds of kids that participates in this camp for soccer or for tennis or whatever. It's not really selective. And it's not a place where the coaches may be looking out for you. So you may be able to develop your skills at these very expensive programs, but the best value, as the final point says here, if you are just trying to develop your skills, you might be able to do that in a way that is much less expensive, much more local in focus. So don't just assume that the higher priced programs are going to be the most valuable to you. You need to do a very, very honest assessment of your own skills, where you are in terms of your ability to be recruited. And if you're not sure, you really need to speak very frankly and very openly with your coach or your coaches if you're playing both club and school teams. You need to get a handle on your ability to get recruited to the kind of schools that you want to attend, and then make choices that comport with that reality. When it comes to fine arts, and we're talking about the plastic arts here, we're talking about, painting, drawing, sculpture, things like that. The most valuable ones are the selective ones, where not just everyone gets in. So the Rhode Island School of Design has a summer program that is, not everyone can get into that program. So the fact that you participated in it and were able to get in, that's a great thing. That is actually an accomplishment. It's also a long duration, and it can be kind of expensive, to be honest, but they do have financial aid for some students. It's the selectivity and the duration that will really help you to build the skills and the portfolio necessary to make it possible for you to gain entrance to these selective art programs. Again, whether it's an art school or a liberal arts major in studio art, doesn't really matter. The idea here is that if you're pursuing an activity in art, you want to make sure it's a selective one if you possibly can. The least valuable ones are unselective short programs that are not really focused on developing your technique. So maybe it's something gee whiz here. We're going to teach you how to do, landscape photography, but maybe it's not that selective. Maybe it's not that focused on developing darkroom skills or developing editing skills if that's what you're doing for photography. You need to really understand what the curriculum is before you sign up, especially if you're going to be paying a lot of money for it. There are often local programs in the arts where you can build your skills. Art is like everything else. It's a matter of practice and also getting tips and pointers to help you improve your own abilities. So there may be programs that are less expensive, more local, in your community, at universities, at community colleges, where you can improve those skills. And if that's what you need and want, don't necessarily reach out for those ones that are so very expensive if they are not selective. It's not worth it. And then, of course, there's this free alternative, build your own portfolio. I do have students who spend time during the summer. Maybe they have their own objectives for their portfolio and they know kind of what they want to do and what they need to do for their portfolio, but they just don't have time during the school year to do it. So they set up a space in their spare bedroom, or maybe they're doing it outside. Maybe it's just a project that they've got in their head that they want to do, and so they execute on it. So I've had students very successfully do that. I had one that did a photography project that was really pretty awesome, and he didn't do it as in a supervised way as part of a course. He just spent a lot of time creating this really awesome portfolio, because in order to create the portfolio, he needed to have millions of photos to choose from, and that took time to go out and make those photographs. So it's not always necessary that you have to do some sort of a program. What are you trying to do? For an art program, you're trying to have an awesome portfolio that demonstrates your skills, your ability, your message, what it is you're trying to say with your art. So if you can do that without even taking a course, that's awesome. Performing arts, also similar. The valuable programs are those where you have to audition. They are selective, and they often are of longer duration because then you get more practice, more skill, more performance opportunity. The least valuable ones and the ones that are kind of disappointing for students are the ones where you don't have to audition to get into the program, but you audition when you get there. So you pay a lot of money, and then you get to the program, and then you find out you're in the chorus or you're not even cast. Most programs will have some sort of a policy that says, well, everyone gets cast, but you might be, chorus girl in the back on the far left, and that's it. So you don't want to be that person. You want to make sure that if you're going to a program, you're going to get the kind of skills and involvement that you deserve. The money you spend could be kind of a waste. The best value, I think, for performing arts students is to spend the time auditioning and performing locally. Now, depends on where you live. You might not have tons of opportunity there, but there are often community theater programs in your community where you can just audition. And in the summertime, there are often programs going on that you can latch onto locally. Getting into a community theater performance or production, maybe it's not even just for kids, it's for adults, and you land a kid's role in that production. Well, that tells me a lot more about your abilities than being able to pay for a very expensive program in Los Angeles that anyone can go to as long as they have the money. So again, with every activity, including your summer activities, you want to be thinking about the level of your achievement. And sometimes the level of achievement can be best expressed by the cheapest and most local option. The same goes for community service. Cheaper local options are often the best value. The most valuable community service project is the one that you initiate that delivers a clear and measurable impact. Now, if you don't initiate it yourself, that's okay, but you want that clear and measurable impact that you can point to your involvement in this community service project, and you could say, I did that. I was the one who made that happen. The least valuable activities are the ones where you have to spend a whole lot of money and go halfway around the world to find someone to serve. I kind of poo-poo this, and there's a lot of joking around in the admissions offices everywhere where people spend a lot of money to go from Georgia to Nepal to work with poor children. You know, there are poor children in Georgia. And there are organizations in Georgia that are serving poor children. If what you want to do is to be involved and engage with alleviating poverty, well, generally you don't have to go very far in America to find poor people. You know, generally most of us live within a few minutes of people who are not as well off as we are that could use our assistance in some way or another. And there are local organizations do that. But more and more students will have these trips where they go to Honduras or they go to Bolivia, and they will work with poor people as part of this travel program, community service. You know, it is not the actual act of performing community service that's going to get you into college. It's the measurable impact you make on the humans that you're serving. Or if it's not humans, maybe you're serving animals because you're interested in animal rights. Whatever, it doesn't matter. What is the level of impact? And going to Bolivia for 2 weeks and painting a school and playing soccer with some kids in a field, somebody's making a lot of money off of that, and it ain't the people in that organization that you're serving, and it ain't those kids that you're going to visit, and you're paying a whole lot of money for airfare when you could just be driving across town and helping an organization locally and having a much bigger impact. The other thing is that you want to make sure that your involvement is consistent. So the 2-week one-off thing where you just go do community service in Bolivia for 2 weeks with this highly priced service program, that's nothing compared to showing up every Saturday morning for 2 years at your public library helping out because the public library doesn't have enough resources. Or tutoring consistently at a particular organization for a couple of years. This is what they're really looking for with community service. It's not the one-off, I served soup on Thanksgiving one year. No, do you really have commitment to serving those less fortunate than yourself? And if so, what are you doing and how well are you doing it? That is the issue. So, find those local things that you can do consistently over the course of your high school career, and that will pay off much more than the expensive service trips abroad. Obviously, there's also a huge industry of adventure and travel programs for teens, and I did this. I was a leader just out of college for 3 summers while I was in graduate school and whatnot, where I led these adventure and travel programs for young people. And they can be really cool. I think they can be really fun. I had a good time when I was a leader. I think that most of my students, with a few exceptions, also enjoy them. So they can be great. But if we're thinking about them as something valuable for your college application, we need to be careful. The more valuable programs are those that provide some sort of a challenge that test your mettle. Now, in some cases, those are physical challenges. Sometimes they are challenges of, living in a new environment where you actually, your hand is not being held so much. You've got more to do. It's more personally challenging. Or it could be, in some cases, mixed up with some sort of an academic challenge. And there are some programs out there that have a very strong academic component to them. So those programs are going to be more valuable than those that are just kind of gee whiz, travel around the world, see the sights, hang out with some friends, and, I did my selfie here on St. Mark's Square in Venice. Or in Venice, the required selfie in the gondola. Fine, that's like you went to Disneyland. That's awesome. That's really cool, but it's not an accomplishment. right? It's that you were able to get on an airplane and somehow you were able to afford it, and you were to go with this group and pay them good money to have this experience. It's passive. It's not active. I didn't mention, so one of the other kinds of programs that can be physically challenged are these wilderness programs. I do like Outward Bound and National Outdoor Leadership School. Those can be very challenging and can be time for personal growth for the student. Those are better than the ones where you just go sightseeing and stuff like that. A good value for adventure or having some sort of a travel program are the ones that you plan yourself, that you do more locally. So maybe you and a friend do a camping adventure somewhere, or maybe you decide over a course of a week you're going to hike a portion of the Appalachian Trail, and you're going to do it solo or just with your friend, where you plan it yourself and you actually figure out the gear and what you need, and you're able to say, I did this by myself. What they're looking for is initiative. They're looking for the ability to get outside your own comfort zone. It's much more comfortable to sign up with a group that's traveling to Paris, Rome, and Vienna and see the sights. But what you're going to get rewarded for is the personal involvement in the planning and in the execution of this adventure. Work is something that fewer and fewer students are doing as high school students, especially within a certain economic class. So work is valuable, and I find that even some of my students who are of more modest means, they're like, well, all I'm doing is working. I just have a job. I had a young woman a few years ago. She's now graduated from college, but she said, oh, I'm so boring. I don't really have any good activities. I just work at In-N-Out Burger. Well, yeah, she worked at In-N-Out Burger her entire high school career, 20 hours per week. And she had been promoted 3 or 4 times during that commitment. So she had that job for a long term. And she got increased responsibility. And when it came to apply to college, she ended up getting a free ride. Because she was able to demonstrate not only her academic abilities, but she is a very, very responsible person who can manage her time extraordinarily well. So she was rewarded for that. So work can be an excellent way to demonstrate extracurricular achievement on your application. It also can help if that job is related to your field of interest, or if somehow you can relate that, somehow you can move it into that realm of interest. In this particular woman's case, who was working at In-N-Out Burger, she was really interested in physics, and I don't know how much the burger industry really helped her in terms of physics, but it did help her get into college. The least valuable work experience are the ones that you either have to pay to get, and seriously, this does exist, where you pay someone else to place you in a job. That does exist for high school kids now. It's crazy. Or something that is very, very short, where you're only working for a week or two. And I have seen this where students will work for 1 week and think it's, that it's really valuable. It's not. 1 week commitment is not anywhere like working at In-N-Out Burger for 4 years. The other thing is finding a job that's far away from home. That doesn't really matter. Now, I have seen students get jobs far away from home if they are clearly in the realm of their interest. I had a student one time, for example, who was really, really interested in airplanes and in airport management, and he was able to get a shorter term job at an airport, at a small general aviation airport, for a couple of weeks. He had to go to his grandparents' house to do it. It worked out. And it was a really good experience because it's something that he probably wants to do as his career. So that was cool. But, you don't necessarily want to be looking at the job that's far away in another country or another state when you can find something cool and interesting close to home. The best value can also be just that good, solid summertime job where you're the busboy at the restaurant, where you are an assistant landscaper pulling weeds all summer. Those jobs can be really great too. They earn you some money, which most kids need as they're planning for college, and they can again show a level of commitment. If you're showing up for 40 hours a week every week for the entire summer, then that shows a level of commitment that will be rewarded. Internships. These are things that I get questions about a lot. Should my son or daughter do an internship? Well, yes, they should. Why not? but some internships are better than others. The best value in internships are those unpaid positions that take place over a long period of time, have a high level of commitment, high level of responsibility, and a measurable impact. Now, this is not that much different from community service in an organization, but it really depends on what the organization is. So I have seen really good internships where students have really contributed to the enterprise. It could be a nonprofit organization, which then borders on community service, or it could be something where you're really giving back to an organization in some other way. It's hard for high school students to find bona fide internships at companies because most high school students really don't have skills that allow them to come into an internship that's unsupervised. Now, some companies will have internship programs specially designed for high school students, but those are few and far between. What most people end up thinking of as an internship is what I would just call a job shadow. You may have an internship, what we might call an internship at a doctor's office. Well, you're probably not doing too much, especially if it's only a week. You're maybe getting to understand how a doctor's office works, and you're maybe shadowing the physician or shadowing a nurse or shadowing the office manager or something like that, where you're getting an idea of how the office works. That can be valuable, especially if you're thinking about going into that world as a career, but it's not very valuable as an internship because, again, we're looking for that measurable impact. What did you do? What did you contribute to that organization during that internship? Might not be very much. Finally, the last thing on our list for possible summer fun is research. And this can be a terrific way to demonstrate a student's focus on things academic and scholarly. This can be really great. So the kind of activity that would be of the most value would be to work directly with a professor or a clinical researcher on a clearly defined project over a longer period of time, maybe the whole summer. It might even flop over into the school year. Maybe there is work that can be done after school, a couple of days a week, or maybe not. But the length of time and, again, the value of the contribution is what we're talking about. For students who really do a great job, they may even get their names listed on a publication that comes out of the research project. So that is absolutely the greatest value. The least value is something that's really short and not clearly defined. So doing a week of, quote, research in a lab where you might do a few things really briefly and might get an idea of what the research is all about, but by the end of the week you really haven't accomplished much. That is not the most valuable kind of research experience. So we want to find the thing that, again, like with everything else, we want it to have some sort of measurable impact. Now, there are students who may not, for example, live within a close proximity of a university, who may not have connections with professors or may not have that, they're just for practical reasons, it's just not possible to do guided research projects in a lab. So you might have to look for something else. I will also say that guided research doesn't necessarily just have to be within the sciences. I have had students who have done research projects in political science, in history, economics, computer science. I've seen it in a lot of different kinds of disciplines. The issue is whether or not you're doing research or supporting research for that faculty member. So if it's not possible to become affiliated with a lab, with a professor at a university or some other sort of research-oriented enterprise, it is possible to create one's own research project that may be loosely supervised by someone who knows what they're talking about. So if the student really wants to research things like, I have one student who's working very hard on urban planning, and he's He's found some very brief internships of the 1 week variety. They're not the greatest. He's found a couple of research projects, again, of very short value, very short duration, of limited value. But what he's doing all the while is a research project of his own in urban design and urban planning. And he's doing a lot of reading. He's collected ideas about the kinds of books that he wants to read, and it's relatively general. I mean, he's not taking a hypothesis and testing it in a lab to try to determine the truth and expand the knowledge. Rather, what he's doing is expanding his own knowledge of urban planning and urban design by focusing in on books and articles related primarily to the urban design of Hong Kong, which is where he's from. So he's looking at the history of urban planning in the city, and he's becoming an expert. I mean, full stop. He is actually educating himself as a high schooler to be relatively expert in the history and the principles, the politics of urban design in Hong Kong. So, and he's doing it very loosely guided, and some of it's by me. I'm just saying, I'm not an urban planner, but I'm saying, so what did you learn? What's next on your list? Who can you write to find more information? What kinds of people can you connect with who might recommend books for you to read or articles for you to read? And so he's doing that, and he's really creating this on his own. So while it is not connected to a particular lab or particular professor, he is definitely showing his own initiative, his own drive, his own strong interest in this field. And the more he does, the more he's impressing the people he's talking to because, well, he's done his homework and he knows what he's talking about. So it is possible to create something totally on your own and dig deeply into it because, well, you're passionate about it. I will say very briefly, too, that there is currently a common application question that asks, what topic or idea is so engrossing to you that you lose all track of time? And this is kind of an academic discipline thing. What are you interested in intellectually that you just keep learning more about it? Well, for this young man, it's going to be very easy for him to write an essay that is focused on urban design, and he can say that he himself is the motivator, is the energy, is the drive behind this project, and that's pretty awesome. So to wrap up this discussion of summertime activities, I want to just say that, the summer does require planning. You can't wake up just as you're quitting school for the academic year and realize, holy crow, I have 3 months here that I don't have anything planned. No, you should plan it because it represents an opportunity for you. An opportunity in a lot of ways that should fundamentally be fun. It should be interesting. It should be entertaining. It should be engrossing. It should be something that you care about. This road to college is not a forced march. You want to make sure that it's something you enjoy. But as you're thinking about it and as you are conceptualizing what's important, don't think about the activity itself. As we've seen throughout this entire presentation, any activity can be awesome, can be a terrific way for you to spend your summer. You can also think about ways in which you can combine some of these activities. You can do a sport and you can do some research at the same time, potentially. So do consider that. But what's really important here is the impact. Are you doing something to a degree that shows your motivation, your energy, your accomplishments? That's what you're really doing. And if it's fun, if it's something that you really care about, well, then it should be easy for you to rack up some accomplishments because, well, it's something that you enjoy. That's the whole idea. And even if it isn't something that you fundamentally enjoy, maybe you are like the young woman who works at In-N-Out Burger, it's still an opportunity. It's still an opportunity for you to make some money, to learn a little bit about the world of work, and to demonstrate that you are a responsible, capable young person who maybe is worth consideration for a promotion. So all of those things are good and important, and should fundamentally be fun and rewarding for you. So make a good plan, enjoy your summer, and I'll see you on another video.